"You're not invited to my wedding anymore, Olivia. You're too dramatic, and honestly, I can't risk you ruining the most important day of my life." Those were the words my cousin Cassandra said to me over the phone 3 weeks before her wedding, not in person. Not with any kind of empathy or explanation. Just a cold phone call where she uninvited me from an event I'd been looking forward to for months. An event where I was supposed to be a bridesmaid. An event I'd already spent $800 on, between the dress and the bachelorette party and the bridal shower gifts. I sat there in my apartment in Brooklyn, holding my phone, completely blindsided. "What? Cassandra, what are you talking about? I haven't done anything dramatic. I've been nothing but supportive." "That's exactly what a dramatic person would say," she interrupted, her voice dripping with condescension. "Look, Olivia, I've been talking to the family, and we all agree that you have a tendency to make things about yourself. You seek attention, you create unnecessary conflict, and I'm not going to let you turn my wedding into the Olivia show like you do with everything else." That's not true. When have I ever made things about myself? Literally constantly. At Christmas 2 years ago, you monopolized the conversation talking about your new job. At Aunt Marie's birthday last year, you made a scene about the restaurant being too loud. At Easter, you brought that weird vegan dish that nobody ate and then got all offended about it. You're always doing something to draw attention to yourself, and I'm done with it. My wedding is about me and Trevor, not about you and your constant need for validation. I was so shocked I couldn't even respond. Every example she'd given was either completely false or wildly misrepresented. At Christmas, people had asked me about my new job, and I'd answered their questions. That's called having a conversation. At Aunt Marie's birthday, the restaurant had been unbearably loud, and I'd quietly suggested we ask if they could turn down the music. Hardly a scene. At Easter, I'd brought a vegan dish because I'm vegan and wanted something I could eat, not to make a statement, just to accommodate my own dietary choices. But before I could defend myself, Cassandra continued, "I've already told everyone in the family that you're not coming. I told them you were too busy with work to make it, so you don't have to worry about being embarrassed. I'm being nice by giving you an excuse, but the truth is, Olivia, you're not welcome. I don't want you there. The bridesmaids don't want you there. Trevor's family doesn't know you well enough to care either way, so just accept it and move on. Cassandra, this is insane. We've been close our whole lives. I was supposed to be your bridesmaid. I've already bought the dress, paid for the bachelorette party expenses, given you gifts at 2 separate showers. And I appreciate all of that," she said in a tone that suggested she didn't appreciate any of it. "But it doesn't change the fact that I don't want you at my wedding. My mind is made up. Goodbye, Olivia." She hung up, just ended the call without giving me any chance to respond, to defend myself, to understand what had actually happened. I sat there for probably 20 minutes in complete shock, trying to process what had just occurred. My cousin, someone I'd grown up with, someone I'd considered one of my closest family members, someone whose wedding I'd been actively involved in planning and preparing for, had just uninvited me 3 weeks before the event and accused me of being a dramatic attention seeker. It didn't make any sense. Nothing she'd said was true. I'd never been dramatic at family events. I'd never sought attention or created conflict. I'd always been supportive, helpful, and present when family needed me. I'd been the one who organized the surprise party for my grandmother's 80th birthday. I'd been the one who drove 6 hours each way to attend my uncle's funeral when other family members made excuses. I'd been the one who helped my younger cousin move into her college dorm. I was the reliable one, the responsible one, not the dramatic one. But apparently, Cassandra had told everyone I was too dramatic to attend her wedding. And apparently, the family had agreed with her. And now I was uninvited, excluded, banned from an event I'd spent months preparing for and hundreds of dollars supporting. That phone call happened 3 weeks ago. Today is Cassandra's wedding day. Right now, at this exact moment, she's probably walking down the aisle in the beautiful venue she rented in the Hamptons, wearing her $8,000 wedding dress, surrounded by 200 guests, marrying Trevor Ashford III. Yes, his name actually has the 3, and yes, he actually insists people use it. And at this exact same moment, my event flyer has just hit 2 million views on social media. 2 million people have now seen the truth about Cassandra's wedding. 2 million people know what she didn't want anyone to know. 2 million people are sharing and commenting and reacting to information that's making Cassandra's perfect wedding significantly less perfect. Let me back up and tell you the whole story. Because you need to understand how we got here. You need to understand what that flyer says, why it went viral, and why Cassandra's wedding day is not going the way she planned. My name is Olivia Chen. I'm 31 years old. I'm a marketing director at a tech startup in New York City, making approximately $120,000 a year doing work I genuinely enjoy. I live in a one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn that I love, despite the rent being absurdly high. I'm single by choice after ending a relationship last year that wasn't going anywhere. I have good friends, a fulfilling career, and a generally happy life. My cousin Cassandra Montgomery is 29 years old. We share a grandmother. My mother and Cassandra's mother are sisters. We grew up in the same town in Connecticut, went to the same schools, spent every holiday and family gathering together for our entire lives. We were close as children, drifted apart a bit during college when we went to different schools, but reconnected in our 20s when we both ended up living in New York. For most of my life, Cassandra and I had a good relationship. We weren't best friends. We had different interests and different social circles. But we were family, and family meant something to both of us. We'd meet for brunch every few months, attend family events together, text occasionally about random things, maintain that comfortable cousin relationship where you're not super close, but you're also not distant. That changed about 2 years ago when Cassandra met Trevor Ashford III at a charity gala in Manhattan. Trevor comes from old money. His family owns a commercial real estate empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He's 35, works in his family's business in some vague executive position that seems to involve a lot of golf and networking lunches, but not much actual work. He's handsome in that generic, wealthy white guy way. Perfectly styled blonde hair, expensive suits, teeth so white they're almost blinding, the kind of appearance that money buys. Cassandra fell hard and fast. Within 2 weeks of meeting Trevor, she was posting about him constantly on social media. Within a month, she was talking about how perfect he was, how successful, how she'd finally found someone on her level. Within 3 months, she'd essentially rewritten her entire personality to match what she thought Trevor wanted. Before Trevor, Cassandra had been relatively normal. She'd worked in marketing at a mid-level company, made decent money, lived in a nice but not extravagant apartment in Manhattan. After Trevor, everything changed. She became obsessed with wealth and status. She started dressing exclusively in designer clothes, posting photos of luxury handbags and shoes with price tags visible in the background. She started name-dropping constantly, mentioning which exclusive restaurants she'd dined at, which expensive hotels she'd stayed at, which famous people she'd supposedly met. She started looking down on people who didn't meet her new standards of wealth and sophistication. She also started treating family differently. Suddenly, family gatherings weren't good enough for her unless they met certain standards. She'd complain if holiday dinners weren't catered. She'd make snide comments about relatives who worked regular jobs instead of prestigious careers. She'd judge people's clothes, their cars, their homes, their life choices through this new lens of wealth-based superiority. I watched this transformation with a mixture of concern and disappointment. This wasn't the Cassandra I'd grown up with. This was someone who'd been infected by Trevor's world of privilege and had decided that money equaled worth, that status equaled value, that anyone without wealth wasn't worth her time or respect. But I tried to maintain our relationship. I overlooked the snobbery. I ignored the condescension. I reminded myself that people sometimes change when they fall in love, and maybe Cassandra would settle back into herself once the initial infatuation wore off. Instead, it got worse. Especially after Trevor proposed. The proposal happened about a year after they started dating. Trevor took Cassandra to Paris. First-class flights, 5-star hotel, private tour of the Louvre. He proposed at the top of the Eiffel Tower at sunset with a 5-carat diamond ring that probably cost more than most people's cars. It was elaborate and expensive and perfectly Instagrammable, which seemed to be Trevor's main criterion for romantic gestures. Cassandra posted about it immediately, of course. Multiple posts from multiple angles, close-ups of the ring, photos of the Eiffel Tower, captions about how she'd found her prince, how she was going to be Mrs. Ashford, how her life was finally perfect. The wedding planning began immediately and was just as excessive as the proposal. Cassandra wanted everything to be perfect, which in her vocabulary meant expensive. The most expensive venue, the most expensive photographer, the most expensive florist, the most expensive everything. She'd transformed into a bridezilla of epic proportions. Every detail had to be exactly right. Every element had to be Instagram-worthy. Every aspect of the wedding had to reflect the wealth and status of the Ashford family. She assembled a bridal party of 8 bridesmaids, including me. We were all given very specific instructions about what was expected. Designer bridesmaid dresses that cost $400 each. Professional hair and makeup that we had to pay for ourselves at $250 per person. Expensive gifts for the engagement party, bridal shower, and bachelorette party. We were expected to attend every pre-wedding event, accommodate every demand, support every decision without question. The bachelorette party alone cost each bridesmaid $800. Cassandra wanted to go to Napa Valley for a long weekend. We had to pay for our own flights, our own share of the luxury Airbnb, our own meals at expensive restaurants, our own portion of the wine tours and spa treatments. And we had to act grateful for the privilege of spending $800 to celebrate Cassandra's upcoming marriage to a man most of us found insufferable. I paid all of it without complaint. I bought the expensive dress. I paid for the bachelorette party expenses. I gave generous gifts at both showers. I attended every event. I smiled and congratulated and supported, even when I privately thought Cassandra was being ridiculous, because that's what family does. You show up. You support each other even when you don't particularly agree with their choices. You put aside your own judgments and be there for the people you love during important moments. I was doing everything right. I was a good bridesmaid, a good cousin, a good family member. And then, 3 weeks before the wedding, Cassandra called and uninvited me. The accusation of being too dramatic came completely out of nowhere. I'd never been dramatic at any family event. I'd never made scenes or sought attention or created conflict. I'd always been quiet, supportive, helpful in the background. I was literally the opposite of dramatic. But Cassandra had decided I was too dramatic, had convinced herself, and apparently the rest of the family, that I was some kind of attention-seeking problem, and had uninvited me from the wedding without any real explanation or evidence. In the immediate aftermath of that phone call, I was devastated. I called my mother crying, trying to understand what had happened. She was sympathetic, but also seemed to accept Cassandra's version of events. "Honey, maybe you have been a little much lately," my mother said gently. "Maybe you don't realize how you come across sometimes. Cassandra wouldn't just uninvite you for no reason. Maybe there's some truth to what she's saying, and you should take this as an opportunity for self-reflection." Even my own mother was taking Cassandra's side without question. Even she was willing to believe I was the problem based on nothing but Cassandra's word. I called my best friend Maya, who I've known since college. She was outraged on my behalf. "That's insane," Maya said immediately. "You're literally the least dramatic person I know. You're the one who always avoids conflict. You're the one who stays calm when everyone else is freaking out. Cassandra is completely making this up." "But why?" I asked. "Why would she make up something like this? What did I do?" "You didn't do anything," Maya insisted. "This isn't about you. This is about her. She's probably dealing with wedding stress, and she's taking it out on you. Or maybe Trevor doesn't like you for some reason, and she's trying to please him. Or maybe she's just turned into a terrible person who treats people badly. But this isn't your fault. Live. Don't let her make you think it is." I wanted to believe Maya. But when multiple family members seemed to accept Cassandra's narrative without question, I started to doubt myself. Maybe I was dramatic and didn't realize it. Maybe I did seek attention without being aware of it. Maybe there was something wrong with my behavior that everyone could see except me. I spent 3 days spiraling, analyzing every family interaction I'd had for the past year, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. I came up empty. I genuinely couldn't identify any behavior that would qualify as dramatic or attention-seeking. Finally, on day 4 after the uninvite, I decided to reach out to another bridesmaid to try to understand what had happened. I texted Melissa, one of Cassandra's college friends who I'd gotten to know during wedding planning. "Hey, Melissa. I know this is awkward, but did Cassandra say anything to you about why I'm not in the wedding anymore? I'm trying to understand what happened." Melissa responded an hour later. Oh God, Liv, I wasn't supposed to say anything, but honestly, I think you deserve to know. Cassandra didn't uninvite you because you're dramatic. She uninvited you because Trevor doesn't like you. My stomach dropped. What? Why doesn't Trevor like me? Because you're more successful than Cassandra. You make more money, you have a better job, you're more accomplished. Trevor noticed that at family events, like how people would ask you about your work and be impressed by what you do. He said it made Cassandra look bad by comparison. He told her she should distance herself from people who outshine her. And you were top of that list. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Are you serious? She uninvited me because her fiancé is insecure about my job? Pretty much. Trevor wants Cassandra to surround herself with people who make her look good. You make her look average by comparison because you're actually accomplished without family, money, or connections. So you had to go. The dramatic thing is just the excuse she came up with to justify it to the family. This is insane. I know. I'm actually thinking about dropping out of the wedding party, too. The whole thing has gotten so toxic. Cassandra is acting like a completely different person. But I'm telling you this because I think you deserve to know the truth. You didn't do anything wrong. This is about Trevor's ego and Cassandra's willingness to sacrifice her relationships to please him. After that conversation, my devastation turned to anger. I hadn't been uninvited because of anything I'd done wrong. I'd been uninvited because I was too successful, too accomplished, too independent for Trevor's taste. Because my presence at the wedding might remind people that Cassandra's worth didn't just come from marrying a rich man. Because Trevor Ashford III couldn't handle the existence of a woman in his fiancé's life who had achieved success without the benefit of family wealth. The anger simmered for a few days. I thought about just letting it go, just accepting the situation and moving on. But then something else happened that changed everything. I was scrolling through social media when I saw a post from one of Trevor's friends, a guy named Blake, who I'd met once at a dinner party. Blake had posted a screenshot of a group chat, apparently not realizing his privacy settings were set to public. The screenshot showed a conversation between several of Trevor's friends, including Trevor himself. The conversation was about the wedding. Specifically, it was Trevor and his friends making jokes about Cassandra and her family, calling them new money trying to act old money, making fun of Cassandra's mother's attempts to fit in with the Ashford family's social circle, mocking the way Cassandra dressed and talked and tried to impress Trevor's parents. One message from Trevor said, "It's cute how hard she tries. Like a puppy begging for approval. At least she'll look good in the wedding photos." Another message, in response to someone asking if Trevor really loved Cassandra. Love? She's hot and she worships me. That's close enough. Plus, Mom wanted me to get married by 35 and stop dating models who embarrass the family. Cassandra fits the bill. I sat there staring at these messages, my anger evolving into something colder and more determined. Trevor didn't love Cassandra. He was marrying her because she was attractive and desperate to please him and socially acceptable to his family. He made fun of her behind her back with his friends. He thought of her as a pet, not a partner, and Cassandra was about to marry this man. About to legally bind herself to someone who viewed her with contempt. About to spend her life trying to earn the approval of someone who would never respect her because he fundamentally looked down on her and her entire family. Someone should tell her. Someone should make sure she knew the truth about Trevor before she married him. Someone should give her the opportunity to make an informed decision about whether this was really the man she wanted to spend her life with. But if I tried to tell her, she wouldn't believe me. She'd already decided I was dramatic and attention-seeking. If I came to her with screenshots of Trevor's messages, she'd accuse me of trying to sabotage her wedding. She'd probably say I was jealous, that I'd fabricated the messages, that I was trying to steal her happiness. I needed a different approach. An approach that would get the information out there in a way that couldn't be easily dismissed or suppressed. An approach that would force the truth into the open before Cassandra made the biggest mistake of her life. That's when I had the idea that would eventually lead to that viral flyer. I work in marketing, specifically digital marketing and social media strategy. I understand how information spreads online. I understand what makes content viral, what makes people share, what captures public attention. And I realized I could use those skills to expose the truth about Trevor in a way that would be impossible to ignore. I spent a week gathering information, I took screenshots of Blake's post before he deleted it and made his account private. I documented everything I knew about Trevor's behavior. The condescending way he spoke to service workers. The racist comment I'd heard him make at a family dinner. The story Melissa had told me about him being rude to one of Cassandra's friends who he deemed not worth his time. I created a simple, professional-looking event flyer. The kind of design you might see for a fundraiser or charity event. Clean layout, nice fonts, professional appearance. At the top, in large letters, the Trevor Ashford III wedding, what you're not being told. Below that, I laid out the facts in clear, concise bullet points. Trevor has referred to his fiancée as a puppy begging for approval in private messages with friends. Trevor told friends he doesn't love Cassandra, but she's hot and worships him, so that's close enough. Trevor stated he's marrying Cassandra primarily because his mother wanted him to get married by 35, and Cassandra is socially acceptable to his family. Trevor regularly mocks Cassandra and her family behind their backs for being new money trying to act old money screenshots. And evidence available upon request for verification at the bottom, I added, Cassandra Montgomery deserves to know the truth about the man she's marrying. Share this if you believe people deserve to make informed decisions about their marriages. Know the truth, Ashford wedding. I looked at the finished flyer on my laptop screen. It was professional, factual, not inflammatory or exaggerated. Just the truth, presented clearly, with an offer to provide evidence to anyone who wanted to verify the claims. Part of me thought about just sending it directly to Cassandra. But I knew she wouldn't believe it coming from me, the cousin she'd accused of being dramatic and attention-seeking. She'd dismiss it as jealousy or with a video explaining the situation in more detail, then read it in several relevant subreddits. I posted it at 11 p.m. on a Friday night, exactly 1 week before Cassandra's wedding. Prime social media hours when people are scrolling mindlessly before bed, when content is most likely to be shared and spread. Then I waited. The response started slowly. A few likes, a few shares, a few comments from people saying, "This is horrible," or "Someone should tell her," or "Why are rich people like this?" Standard social media engagement that could go either way, viral or forgotten by morning. Then, around 1 a.m., something shifted. A popular Twitter account with 500,000 followers, someone who commented on social issues and viral stories, shared my post. They added commentary. Imagine finding out your fiancé thinks of you as close enough to love just because you'll look good in photos. Women deserve better than this. The wedding is in a week. Someone get this information to the bride. That retweet changed everything. Suddenly, thousands of people were seeing the flyer. Within an hour, it had been shared 10,000 times. By morning, it had hit 100,000 shares across multiple platforms. People were outraged. Women especially were sharing it with comments about their own experiences with men who viewed them as status symbols rather than partners. People who'd been in similar situations where they'd married someone who didn't really love them and regretted it. People who wished someone had told them the truth before they'd made a terrible decision. The story had hit a nerve. It wasn't just about Cassandra and Trevor anymore. It had become a broader conversation about relationships based on status rather than genuine connection, about wealthy men treating women as accessories, about the importance of knowing the truth before making lifelong commitments. By Saturday afternoon, 24 hours after I'd posted it, the flyer had been viewed over 500,000 times across all platforms. News outlets were picking it up, not major ones yet, but wedding blogs and relationship websites and social media news accounts. People were dissecting every detail, sharing their opinions, debating whether it was ethical to expose this information publicly versus trying to tell Cassandra privately. Some people criticized me, saying I was interfering in someone else's relationship, that Cassandra had a right to make her own choices even if they were bad ones, that posting this publicly was inappropriate. But the overwhelming response was supportive, people saying someone needed to tell Cassandra the truth, that letting her marry Trevor without knowing how he really felt would be cruel, that I was doing the right thing by making sure she had all the information before making a lifelong decision. By Sunday morning, the flyer had hit 1 million views, 1 million people had seen the truth about Trevor Ashford III. 1 million people were talking about Cassandra's wedding and whether she knew what she was getting into. The hashtag $Ashford was trending on Twitter. That's when traditional media picked it up. A reporter from a major online news outlet contacted me asking for an interview. Several others followed. They wanted the full story, the context, the screenshots I'd mentioned. I provided everything. The screenshots of Trevor's messages, the full backstory about being uninvited from the wedding, the explanation of why I'd chosen to handle it this way. I gave interviews explaining that I wasn't trying to ruin Cassandra's wedding out of spite or revenge. I was trying to make sure she had complete information before making a decision she might regret forever. I love my cousin, I told one reporter. I want her to be happy, but happiness based on lies isn't real happiness. If Trevor genuinely loved and respected her, I'd support their marriage even if I didn't particularly like him. But he doesn't. He views her with contempt. He's marrying her for superficial reasons. She deserves to know that before she legally binds herself to him. Maybe she'll still choose to marry him anyway. That's her right. But she should make that choice with full knowledge of who he really is and how he really feels. The story exploded. By Monday, every major news outlet was covering it. The New York Times ran a piece about social media activism and modern relationships. CNN did a segment about it on their morning show. TMZ got involved, trying to dig up dirt on Trevor and his family. The whole thing had become a massive news story that transcended the original post. Trevor's group chat messages were analyzed by commentators and relationship experts. His character was dissected. His family's wealth and privilege were examined. The whole thing became a referendum on how wealthy men treat women, how marriages based on status rather than love are doomed to fail, how important it is to know your partner's true feelings before making a commitment. Cassandra, predictably, doubled down. She posted on Instagram that the messages were fake, taken out of context, misunderstood. She said Trevor loved her deeply, and she loved him, and nothing would stop their wedding from being perfect. She accused me, without naming me directly, but everyone knew who she meant, of being a jealous, attention-seeking family member who was trying to ruin her happiness. But her protests rang hollow. The screenshots were clearly authentic, verified by multiple tech experts who analyzed the metadata. Trevor's friends who'd been in the group chat went silent or deleted their social media accounts, which only made them look more guilty. Trevor himself refused to comment, which made him look even worse. The Ashford family tried damage control. They released a statement saying the messages were private, conversations taken out of context, and that Trevor and Cassandra were deeply in love and committed to their future together. But the statement was so corporate and impersonal that it only reinforced the impression that this was about status and appearances rather than genuine love. By Tuesday, 5 days before the wedding, the flyer had hit 1.5 million views. Major publications were running think pieces about it. Social media influencers were making videos about it. The whole internet was talking about Cassandra and Trevor's wedding and whether it should go forward. Some guests started backing out. RSVPs were withdrawn. People who'd planned to attend decided they didn't want to be part of a wedding that had become such a public spectacle, or that they didn't want to support a marriage that seemed so fundamentally flawed. Cassandra's bridal party started falling apart. 3 bridesmaids dropped out, saying they couldn't in good conscience support a wedding where the groom had such obvious contempt for the bride. Melissa was one of them. She texted me privately, "Thank you for doing this." Someone needed to tell the truth. I hope Cassandra comes to her senses. By Wednesday, 4 days before the wedding, I received a cease and desist letter from the Ashford family's lawyers. They demanded I delete all posts about Trevor and the wedding, that I stop giving interviews to media outlets, that I issue a public apology for defaming Trevor's character. I forwarded the letter to the ACLU and several media law organizations. They all said the same thing. I was protected by the First Amendment. The information I'd shared was true and verifiable. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. The Ashfords had no legal standing to silence me. I responded to their lawyers with my own letter. My statements are true, and I can prove it. If Trevor Ashford III would like to sue me for defamation, I welcome the opportunity to present all evidence in court, including additional screenshots and testimonies from people who've witnessed his behavior. I suspect he will decline this opportunity because discovery would only reveal more information damaging to his character and reputation. They didn't respond. They knew I was right. A defamation suit would only give me a platform to present even more evidence of Trevor's character. And they didn't want that. By Thursday, 3 days before the wedding, the flyer had hit 1.8 million views. The story was international now. UK tabloids, Australian news sites, European media outlets were all covering it. It had become one of those viral stories that transcends its origins and becomes a cultural moment. The wedding venue contacted Cassandra asking if she wanted to postpone or cancel given the media attention. Several vendors offered refunds if she wanted to call it off. Even some of Trevor's family members were reportedly suggesting they delay the wedding until the media storm died down. But Cassandra refused. She posted another Instagram statement. "The wedding is happening. We will not be intimidated or manipulated by people who want to see us fail. Trevor and I love each other, and we're getting married this Saturday as planned. To everyone who's been spreading lies and trying to ruin our happiness, you failed. Our love is stronger than your jealousy and drama." I felt a complicated mix of emotions reading that. Part of me was frustrated that she still refused to see the truth. Part of me was sad that she'd rather proceed with a doomed marriage than admit she'd made a mistake. Part of me wondered if I should have handled this differently, if there was some other way to reach her that might have worked better. But mostly, I felt determined. I'd done what I could to give her the information she needed. If she chose to ignore it, if she chose to marry Trevor, despite knowing how he really felt about her, that was her decision to make. At least she couldn't say later that nobody tried to warn her. At least she couldn't claim she had no idea what kind of man Trevor really was. By Friday, 2 days before the wedding, the flyer had hit 2 million views. 2 million people had seen the truth about Trevor Ashford III. The story had reached critical mass. Everyone online seemed to know about it, have an opinion on it, be following developments. The media descended on the Hamptons venue. News vans were parked outside. Reporters were trying to get comments from guests. Photographers were camping out, hoping to get photos of Cassandra or Trevor arriving for rehearsal. The rehearsal dinner that Friday night reportedly went forward, but was tense and awkward. Multiple guests later posted about it anonymously, describing how Trevor barely spoke to Cassandra, how the Ashford family seemed cold and distant, how several people got drunk and said inappropriate things, how the whole evening felt like a funeral rather than a celebration. One anonymous post described Trevor drinking heavily and telling his groomsmen, "After tomorrow, my mom will get off my back about getting married and I can go back to doing what I want. Cassandra's hot enough to make it tolerable and dumb enough that she won't ask too many questions." That quote circulated widely, adding more fuel to the fire. Even people who'd thought maybe the original messages were exaggerated or taken out of context had to confront the reality that Trevor genuinely had contempt for his fiancée and was marrying her for convenience rather than love. Saturday. Morning, the wedding day, arrived. I woke up early, my stomach churning with anticipation and anxiety. Somewhere in the Hamptons, Cassandra was probably getting her hair and makeup done, putting on her $8,000 wedding dress, preparing to marry a man who'd told his friends she was close enough to love. I checked social media. The flyer was still circulating widely, still being shared, still being discussed, still generating commentary. It had taken on a life of its own, grown beyond anything I'd anticipated when I first posted it a week ago. My phone rang. It was a blocked number. I answered cautiously. "Olivia Chen?" A woman's voice asked. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Patricia Ashford. I'm Trevor's mother." I sat up straight, my heart pounding. Trevor's mother was calling me? On the morning of the wedding? "Mrs. Ashford, I'm surprised to hear from you." "I'm sure you are." Her voice was cold, clipped, controlled. "I'm calling to inform you that the wedding is proceeding as scheduled. Despite your best efforts to sabotage it, despite your petty jealousy and attention-seeking behavior, my son is marrying Cassandra today. Your little social media stunt has failed to achieve whatever vindictive goal you were pursuing." Mrs. Ashford, with respect, I wasn't trying to sabotage anything or seek attention. I was trying to make sure Cassandra had complete information about who she was marrying. "You were trying to destroy my son's reputation and ruin his wedding," she interrupted sharply. You posted private conversations without context. You made him look like a villain when he's done nothing wrong. You turned what should have been a beautiful, private family celebration into a media circus. And for what? Because you're jealous that Cassandra found someone and you're still alone? I'm not jealous, Mrs. Ashford. I'm concerned. Your son's messages showed clear contempt for Cassandra. He said he doesn't love her, that she's just close enough, that he's marrying her primarily to satisfy your desire for him to get married by 35. Those were private messages between friends. Men say things to their friends that they don't mean. They exaggerate, they joke, they talk in ways that sound worse than the reality. Trevor loves Cassandra. I know my son. And even if he didn't, even if every word you posted was exactly as genuine as it appeared, it would still be none of your business. Their relationship is between them. You had no right to interfere. Cassandra is my cousin. I love her. I don't want to see her trapped in a loveless marriage with someone who views her with contempt. Then you should have spoken to her privately, rather than making this into a public spectacle that's humiliated our entire family. But that wouldn't have gotten you the attention you wanted, would it? That wouldn't have made you the center of a viral story that's been viewed millions of times. That wouldn't have satisfied your pathological need to make everything about you. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding my phone, shaking slightly from the confrontation. Patricia Ashford had called me on her son's wedding day to tell me the wedding was happening anyway, to accuse me of jealousy and attention-seeking, to make sure I knew that my efforts had failed. But had they failed? Yes, the wedding was still happening. Cassandra was still marrying Trevor despite everything. But 2 million people now knew the truth about him. Cassandra had been given information she needed to make an informed decision. Even if she chose to proceed anyway, at least she couldn't claim later that she had no idea what kind of man Trevor was. I spent the morning following updates on social media. People were posting from the wedding venue. Guests who'd decided to attend. Media who'd staked out locations nearby. Protesters who'd shown up to demonstrate against marriages based on status rather than love. Yes, protesters. A small group of women's rights activists had actually organized a demonstration outside the venue, holding signs saying things like, "Love should be real," and "Women are not status symbols, and Cassandra deserves better." The whole situation had evolved so far beyond my original intention that it had become this strange cultural flashpoint. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 p.m. At 2:45, I received a text from Melissa. She's about to walk down the aisle. She looks beautiful, but also terrified. Part of me wants to object when they ask if anyone has reasons they shouldn't marry. This is so wrong, Liv. At 2:50, my phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had posted video footage from inside the ceremony on TikTok. Apparently, a guest was live streaming despite the no phones policy. I could see Cassandra in her wedding dress. Could see Trevor standing at the altar in his expensive suit. Could see the 200 guests gathered in the beautiful Hamptons venue. At 2:55, another text from Melissa. It's starting. The music is playing. Here comes the bride. God, I hope she changes her mind and runs. At 3:00 p.m. exactly, while Cassandra was walking down the aisle toward a man who'd told his friends she was hot and worships him, so that's close enough, my viral flyer hit. Exactly 2 million views, 2 million people, had now seen the truth about Trevor Ashford III, too. 1,000,000 people knew what Cassandra was getting into. 2 million people were watching, literally or figuratively, as she made the decision to marry him anyway. The ceremony went forward. According to the live stream and the texts I received from Melissa, Cassandra said, "I do." Trevor said, "I do." The officiant pronounced them husband and wife. They kissed. People applauded. The whole traditional wedding ceremony played out exactly as planned. But it wasn't the fairy tale wedding Cassandra had envisioned. It was a wedding that had become infamous, that 2 million people were talking about, that had been the subject of international news coverage, that everyone knew was based on status and convenience rather than genuine love. As the ceremony ended and guests moved to the reception, my phone rang again. This time it was my mother. "Olivia, what have you done?" she asked, her voice strained. "I told the truth, Mom. That's all I did." "You've humiliated Cassandra. You've humiliated the entire family. Do you have any idea what people are saying? Do you know that reporters have been calling everyone in the family asking for comments? Do you know that your aunt is devastated? That she spent the whole week crying because her daughter's wedding has been turned into a circus? I'm sorry Aunt Linda is upset, but I'm not sorry I told the truth about Trevor. Cassandra deserved to know. She knew everything she needed to know. She chose to marry him anyway. She's an adult who made her own decision. You had no right to interfere. He told his friends he doesn't love her, Mom. He said she's just close enough. He's marrying her because she's convenient, and his mother wanted him to get married. That's not love. That's not a foundation for a marriage. Someone needed to tell her. And you decided that someone should be you? You decided you knew better than Cassandra what was right for her life? You decided that publicly humiliating her and her new husband was the appropriate way to express your concerns? I tried to make it not about humiliation. I tried to present the facts in a straightforward way. I didn't editorialize or exaggerate. I just told the truth. The truth is that you were bitter about being uninvited from the wedding and you wanted revenge. The truth is that you couldn't stand seeing Cassandra happy when you're single and alone. The truth is that you made this entire situation about you and your need for attention. Exactly like Cassandra said you would. That's not true. Mom, that's not what this was about. Then what was it about, Olivia? Explain to me how posting private messages on social media for millions of people to see was about anything other than getting attention and hurting people who'd hurt you? I took a breath, trying to stay calm. It was about making sure Cassandra had all the information before making a lifelong commitment. It was about not letting her marry someone under false pretenses. It was about loving her enough to risk her being angry with me if it meant she might avoid a terrible mistake. Well, congratulations. She's married to Trevor now, fully aware of everything you shared, and you've permanently destroyed your relationship with her and with most of the family. I hope it was worth it, she hung up, just like Cassandra had, just like Patricia Ashford had. Everyone was hanging up on me, refusing to hear my side, refusing to consider that maybe, just maybe, I'd done this for the right reasons even if the execution was messy. The rest of the day was a blur. Social media was flooded with posts from the wedding. Some guests were posting despite the no-phone policy, sharing photos and videos and commentary. The general consensus seemed to be that it was a beautiful wedding that felt hollow and sad, like everyone was pretending everything was fine while knowing it wasn't. One post from an anonymous guest said, "The bride and groom barely looked at each other during the ceremony." He seemed annoyed. She seemed defeated. The whole thing felt like a business transaction dressed up with flowers and cake. Nobody seemed happy. They seemed relieved it was over. Another post described the reception. The dancing was forced. The toasts were awkward. Trevor's best man made a joke about Trevor finally settling down with someone his mom approved of, and the room went silent. Trevor's been drinking heavily since the ceremony ended. Cassandra's been smiling for photos but crying in the bathroom between pictures. This is the saddest wedding I've ever attended. By evening, Dundar Ashford wedding was trending again, but now with a different tone. People weren't just discussing whether the wedding should have gone forward. They were analyzing what it meant that it had. What it said about our culture that a woman would marry a man who openly didn't love her just to maintain appearances and status. What it said about privilege that the Ashfords thought they could just proceed with the wedding and ignore the public discourse. Some people blamed me, saying I'd pushed Cassandra into a corner where calling off the wedding would have been too humiliating, so she felt she had no choice but to go through with it. Others defended me, saying I'd given Cassandra the information she needed, and she'd made her choice with full knowledge of the situation. Late that night, after the reception had ended and the couple had presumably left for their honeymoon, I received a final message. It was from Cassandra, sent from a new Instagram account I didn't recognize. "I hope you're happy, Olivia. You got what you wanted. You made my wedding about you. You made yourself the center of attention, just like you always do. You ruined the happiest day of my life because you're jealous and bitter and can't stand to see me happy. Trevor loves me. I don't care what you posted or what messages you think you saw. He loves me and we're going to have a wonderful life together, and you're not going to be part of it. You're cut off from this family. Nobody wants you around after what you did. Mom, Dad, everyone, they all agree. You're done. I hope your viral post was worth losing your family over. I hope the attention you got was satisfying enough to make up for the fact that you'll never be invited to another family event. That you'll never meet any future nieces or nephews. That you've permanently destroyed every relationship you had with everyone who matters. You're toxic, and you're dramatic, and you're exactly what I said you were, and now everyone knows it. Goodbye, Olivia. I hope your lonely life was worth it." I read the message 3 times, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. Sadness at the loss of family relationships, anger at being blamed and vilified for telling the truth, frustration that Cassandra still refused to see what everyone else could see clearly, and underneath it all, a quiet certainty that I'd done the right thing even if the outcome wasn't what I'd hoped for. I didn't respond to the message. What could I say that would make any difference? Cassandra had made her choice. She'd married Trevor knowing full well how he felt about her, choosing status and wealth over genuine love and respect. That was her decision to make. But she couldn't say she didn't know. That was the important thing. She couldn't say years from now that nobody had warned her, that nobody had tried to tell her the truth, that she'd been blindsided by Trevor's true nature. 2 million people had seen the evidence. The information had been there for her to consider. She'd chosen to ignore it. The days after the wedding were strange. The story gradually faded from mainstream news as other events took over the news cycle, but it remained a persistent topic on social media, referenced in discussions about relationships and marriage and wealth and status. My flyer was saved and reposted and shared continuously. It became one of those internet artifacts that resurfaces periodically when people discuss similar situations. Anytime someone posted about warning signs they'd ignored in a relationship, someone would reference the Ashford wedding. Anytime someone discussed marriages based on money rather than love, someone would bring up Trevor's messages. I received thousands of messages from people, mostly supportive, some critical, all of them engaged with the story in some way. Women who'd been in similar situations thanking me for trying to warn Cassandra, even though she didn't listen. People who'd called off weddings after discovering their partners didn't really love them, saying my post had validated their decisions. Relationship therapists and counselors saying they were using the story as a teaching example in their practices. Some messages were from people criticizing me for interfering in someone else's relationship, saying I'd crossed a line by posting private messages publicly, arguing that even if Trevor was a terrible person, it wasn't my place to expose him, insisting that Cassandra had a right to make her own mistakes without interference. I understood those criticisms. I still do. There's a legitimate argument that I overstepped, that I should have tried harder to reach Cassandra privately, that making everything public was unnecessary and harmful. But I also know that if I'd approached Cassandra privately, she wouldn't have believed me. She'd already decided I was dramatic and attention-seeking. She'd already cut me out of the wedding. She'd already chosen Trevor's version of reality over mine. Private warnings would have been dismissed as jealousy or manipulation. Making it public forced the information into the open where it couldn't be easily suppressed or ignored. It gave Cassandra no choice but to confront the truth about Trevor, even if she ultimately chose to ignore that truth. And it created a permanent record that she'd been warned, that she'd been given all the relevant information, that her decision to marry Trevor was made with full knowledge of his character. About 2 weeks after the wedding, I received an unexpected message on LinkedIn. It was from one of Trevor's former college friends, someone who'd been in that original group chat. "Hey, Olivia. I wanted to reach out and say thank you for posting those messages. I felt guilty for years about being part of those conversations and not saying anything when Trevor talked about women that way. It was easier to just laugh along and ignore it than to call him out. Your post forced me to confront my own complicity in that kind of behavior. I've spent the past 2 weeks thinking about all the times I've been part of group chats or conversations where men talked about women as objects or status symbols, and how I never spoke up because it was uncomfortable or socially awkward to be the guy who ruins the joke. I can't take back my participation in those conversations, but I can commit to doing better going forward, to calling out that kind of talk, to refusing to be part of locker room talk that demeans women, to holding my friends accountable for treating women with respect. I know Cassandra married Trevor anyway. I know your flyer didn't stop the wedding, but it stopped me from being a passive participant in misogyny, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So thank you. That message meant more to me than any of the viral shares or news coverage, because it suggested that maybe, just maybe, my flyer had accomplished something beyond the immediate situation with Cassandra and Trevor. Maybe it had started conversations about how men talk about women in private. Maybe it had made some people reconsider their own behavior and complicity. Maybe it had created some small shift in awareness about the gap between how we present relationships publicly and how we discuss them privately. About a month after the wedding, Melissa reached out. She'd stayed in touch with Cassandra and had updates. The honeymoon was apparently a disaster, Melissa told me over coffee in Brooklyn. Trevor spent most of it on his phone doing work calls and ignoring Cassandra. They fought constantly. One of the hotel staff posted on Reddit that they'd heard them screaming at each other through the walls, Trevor calling her clingy and needy, Cassandra crying that he didn't act like someone on his honeymoon should act. "That's awful," I said. And I meant it. I didn't want Cassandra to be miserable. I'd wanted her to call off the wedding, not to go through with it and be unhappy. "It gets worse," Melissa continued. "Cassandra's already having regrets. She's been texting me saying she thinks she made a mistake, that Trevor's not who she thought he was, that she's trapped now. But she's too proud to admit she should have listened to the warnings. She's too invested in the idea of being Mrs. Trevor Ashford III to walk away, even though she's clearly unhappy." "What about the family? Are they acknowledging that maybe the warnings were valid?" "Sort of. Your mom has apparently been saying privately that she wishes Cassandra had taken more time to really think about whether this marriage was right. Your aunt is devastated because Cassandra calls her crying but won't admit that marrying Trevor was a mistake. Everyone can see that it's not working, but nobody wants to say Olivia was right out loud. I don't need them to say I was right. I just wanted Cassandra to be happy and make an informed decision. I'm sad that she's unhappy now. She could still leave him," Melissa said. "The marriage is only a month old. She could get an annulment or a quick divorce. Cut her losses before it gets worse. But she won't," I said, "because leaving would mean admitting she was wrong. It would mean facing everyone who warned her and saying you were right and I should have listened. It would mean dealing with the embarrassment of a failed marriage after such a public, expensive wedding. She'd rather stay in a bad marriage than admit she made a mistake." Melissa nodded sadly. "You're probably right. She's trapped by her own pride." 3 months after the wedding, Cassandra posted on Instagram for the first time since the wedding. It was a series of photos from some charity gala she'd attended with Trevor. Both of them dressed in formal wear, smiling for the camera, playing the role of the perfect wealthy couple. The caption read, "So grateful for my amazing husband and our beautiful life together. Marriage is everything I dreamed it would be. Blessed, grateful, all married life, Ashford life." But people who knew what to look for could see the truth behind the carefully curated photos. The way Trevor's smile didn't reach his eyes. The way Cassandra's hand on his arm looked tentative and uncertain. The way they stood slightly apart rather than close together like newlyweds in love would stand. The way the whole thing looked like a performance rather than genuine happiness. The comments on the post were telling. Some people congratulated her and left heart emojis, but many others left comments referencing the viral flyer. "We know the truth. You deserve better. It's not too late to leave. Lifetime of this is not worth your pride." Cassandra disabled comments on the post after a few hours 6 months after the wedding, which brings us to the present day. Cassandra is still married to Trevor. She still posts occasionally on social media about their perfect life. She still plays the role of the happy Mrs. Ashford. But according to Melissa and others who've stayed in touch with her, she's deeply unhappy. Trevor is apparently barely home, spending most of his time at work or with friends, leaving Cassandra alone in their expensive Upper East Side apartment. When they do attend events together, they fight beforehand and afterwards. Patricia Ashford has apparently been pressuring them to have children, and Cassandra has been stalling because she knows having Trevor's child would make leaving even harder if she eventually decides to. The family situation remains complicated. I'm still essentially cut off from most of my extended family. My mother and I have a strained relationship. We talk occasionally, but she's made it clear she thinks I handled the situation inappropriately. My Aunt Linda won't speak to me at all. Various cousins and relatives have taken sides, some supporting my decision to expose the truth, others condemning me for interfering. But I'm at peace with my choices. I told the truth. I gave Cassandra the information she needed. I tried to save her from a marriage that everyone could see was based on status and convenience, rather than genuine love and respect. She chose to marry Trevor anyway. She chose to ignore the warnings. She chose to proceed with a wedding that had become infamous for all the wrong reasons. That was her decision to make, and I respect her right to make it even as I disagree with the choice itself. My viral flyer accomplished what I'd hoped it would. It forced the truth into the open. 2 million people saw Trevor's messages. 2 million people knew what kind of man he was. Cassandra had no choice but to confront that information and make her decision with full knowledge of his character. And beyond that immediate goal, the flyer started broader conversations. About how people talk about their partners in private versus public. About marriages based on status and wealth rather than love and respect. About the pressure to proceed with weddings even when there are massive red flags. About the importance of listening to warnings from people who care about you. I check the view count on that original flyer periodically. It's now been viewed over 3 million times as it's been reposted and reshared. 3 million people have seen the truth about Trevor Ashford III. It remains one of the most viral wedding-related posts in internet history. Sometimes I wonder if I would do it differently if I could go back. Would I have tried harder to reach Cassandra privately? Would I have been less public about the information? Would I have found some middle ground between staying silent and going completely viral? But honestly, I don't think any other approach would have worked. Cassandra had already decided I was the problem. Already dismissed my concerns as jealousy and drama. The only way to force her to confront the truth was to make it so public and so undeniable that she couldn't ignore it. She still married Trevor, despite knowing the truth. But at least she knew. At least she made that choice with full information. At least she can't say in 5 or 10 or 20 years that nobody warned her, that nobody tried to tell her what he was really like, that she had no idea what she was getting into. The flyer went viral before her ceremony began. 2 million people knew the truth about her groom before she walked down the aisle. The information was there. She saw it. She chose to proceed anyway. That was her right. Her choice. Her decision to make. And I have to be okay with that. Even as I watch from a distance as she lives a life that looks perfect on Instagram, but is reportedly miserable in reality. Because ultimately, this wasn't about forcing Cassandra to make a specific decision. It was about making sure she had the information to make an informed decision. She had that information. She made her choice. If you're watching this and you're in a situation where someone you love is about to make a terrible decision, you have to decide how far you're willing to go to try to stop them. You have to weigh the risk of destroying your relationship against the potential benefit of saving them from a mistake. I chose to risk everything. My relationship with Cassandra, my place in the family, my reputation, to make sure she knew the truth. I'd make that choice again, because sometimes loving someone means being willing to be the villain in their story, if it means they have the information they need to make good choices. Cassandra sees me as the villain who ruined her wedding. The family sees me as the troublemaker who created unnecessary drama. Trevor's family sees me as the jealous outsider who tried to sabotage their son's marriage. But I know what I am. I'm the person who told the truth. I'm the person who tried to save someone I love from a bad situation. I'm the person who was willing to be hated if it meant giving someone important information. The flyer went viral. 2 million people saw it before Cassandra walked down the aisle. The truth was there for anyone who wanted to see it. What Cassandra chose to do with that truth was up to her, and what I choose to do now, knowing I've lost most of my family but maintained my integrity, is up to me. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about standing up for what's right even when it costs you everything, telling the truth even when people don't want to hear it, and learning that sometimes doing the right thing means being willing to be misunderstood and vilified by people you love. Thanks for watching. And remember, the truth isn't always popular, but it's always worth telling, even if it costs you everything. Even if it goes viral. Even if it changes everything forever. The truth matters. Always.